Jim Thorpe was one of the greatest athletes of all time in both football and track and field. He took home gold medals for the U.S. as a Native American nearly 20 years before Native Americans were considered citizens, defying stereotypes and opening frontiers for Indigenous athletes. He was voted by the Associated Press as the greatest athlete of the first half of the 20th century and proclaimed by the King of Sweden to be the greatest athlete in the world. Jim Thorpe overcame poverty and combated rampant racism throughout his life and athletic career by outperforming other athletes and disproving stereotypes to pave the way for professional Indigenous athletes in sports. Jim Thorpe, a pioneer for Indigenous athletes. In the 19th and early 20th century, Native American prejudice and stereotypes were incredibly prevalent.
In the early 20th century, in the early 1900s, Native Americans were still kind of ridiculed, and they, were thought of as kind of lazy and drinking a lot, and they had that reputation. I think they used terms that we could not use today. They called them redskin and used a lot of Native American derogatory terms to describe him.
Life for Native Americans in the early 20th century was not easy. Reservations were characterized by poverty and poor education, and Native Americans were not given citizenship or the rights of ordinary Americans. Andrew Jackson's Trail of Tears and Indian Removal Act showed natives as an obstacle blocking America, and the Indian Appropriations Act of 1851 ensured Indigenous people would stay segregated from settlers by keeping them on reservations. The Dawes Act of 1887 authorized the government to break up tribal lands into individual plots and required Native Americans to accept these plots as a condition of becoming citizens. It stripped natives of 90 million acres to sell to white settlers and government land. Native American culture was repressed throughout history, including during the 20th century, where attempts to Americanize Indians were popularized. Most schools, such as the Carlisle Indian School, were focused on discipline and Americanizing Native Americans by stripping them of much of their culture. In 1877, Jim Thorpe was born on Sac and Fox Native Territory, where he faced a troubled childhood. Originally named Watho Huck, which translates to Bright Path, Thorpe went through many hardships and tragedies during his early years. Jim grew up very close to his twin brother, Charles, whom he spent hours with outside, fishing, swimming, and playing other sports. At a young age, both his twin brother and his mother died. Despite his father's wishes, Thorpe often skipped school, taking more to the reservation hunting and ranching life. When Thorpe was 16, his father sent him away to Carlisle Indian School, which had the motto, "Kill the Indian, save the man." Though many Native American parents saw these schools as opportunities for their children to escape poverty and obtain a quality education not available on the reservations, the schools were focused on a rigorous assimilation program and cut off young natives from their culture and traditions. At Carlisle, Thorpe started playing football and ran track for Pop Warner, the legendary football coach. Thorpe was an All-American halfback and led the Carlisle football team to dominate with nearly undefeated records. He was incredibly skilled in running the ball and in kicking. He was known for drop-kicking the ball from the half into a field goal. His astounding speed converted well to the track, where he dominated nearly every event he tried, leading to him taking up the decathlon. At Carlisle, Thorpe faced rampant racism from teachers and coaches alike. Even Pop Warner, his legendary coach who opened up life-changing opportunities to him in football and track, was still prejudiced to him. Warner encountered the Indians with all the prejudices of an average white man. They had uncommon powers of observation, he said, attributing that trait to centuries of their forefathers living and surviving outdoors. In 1912, Thorpe competed on the U.S. team in the Olympics, which was groundbreaking for a Native American athlete. He represented America in a time where prejudice against natives was rampant, and they had yet to be given citizenship. At the Olympics, he won both the pentathlon and decathlon by a huge margin. This outstanding achievement led to him being considered by many to be the greatest athlete of the time. Through this achievement, Thorpe broke stereotypes and forever changed public perception of Native Americans.
If American did anything, or either the Carlisle Indian School, they would always make sure to note that they were Indians or they were natives, And once he won the 1912 Olympics, he became just Jim Thorpe. He became just an American. That people could kind of latch onto and have pride in.
Unfortunately, in 1913, Thorpe's Olympic medals were stripped from him when an investigation revealed he had been paid to play baseball in the summer between school years, a practice common to other Olympic athletes who used false names to avoid detection. After his medals were stripped, Thorpe became a symbol of injustice and inspired rights movements against discrimination of Indigenous people. His medals were stripped due to a rule that was unevenly enforced and, in Thorpe's case, smacked of racism. After the Olympics, Thorpe played baseball in the MLB. Although it was not his sport of choice, Thorpe was decent at batting and brought in huge crowds due to his Olympic fame. In totality, his baseball record amounts to 6 years in the MLB, 176 hits, and a .252 career batting average. He played for the Giants, the Reds, and the Braves. Thorpe then went on to play 12 seasons of professional football, where he was a dominant player on the field. He won 3 championships with the Canton Bulldogs and was the highest paid NFL player for many of the league's early years. He eventually retired from football in 1928 as one of the greats and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1963. Thorpe became the first president of the NFL before becoming a coach of an all-Native American team. As Thorpe's athletic achievements became newsworthy, media portrayals of him were often racist. In her article, The Misunderstood Goat, Mary Sanchez states, "His physical accomplishments were often twisted, laced with innuendo and outright stereotypes. The lazy Indian, the drunken Indian, or the broke, hapless man living a vagabond lifestyle in a trailer. And there was the image of him as a naive, undereducated rule breaker who somehow deserved it when he was stripped of his Olympic gold." Even when the media was praising him, he was never just referred to as Jim Thorpe. It was always prefaced with his Native American background. For example, an article in the Salt Lake Tribune described Jim Thorpe saying, "Only 3 short years ago, Jim Thorpe was just a simple and unsophisticated Indian, and it had never dawned upon this simple-minded Indian that he possessed any more ability than that of the average youth." The subtitle of the article is "Redskin Youth from Oklahoma had no knowledge of athletics when he entered Carlisle, is now wonder of the athletic world." This focus on his background is in large part due to the anti-Native American sentiment of the time. Despite the negative elements, Thorpe was shown great appreciation by the media after he had proven himself as a talented athlete, and his media portrayal has only improved throughout the ages. Although he still may not fully get the respect he deserves, modern authors often refer to him as one of the all-time greats and a legendary football player. As one of the first class of inductees into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, he has been recognized with many awards in the media, in the sports world where the Jim Thorpe Award is given to the top defensive back in college football each year, and even had a town in Pennsylvania renamed after him. Jim Thorpe opened frontiers for Native Americans in the Olympics, football, and baseball through his amazing accomplishments. In a letter to Thorpe after the Olympics, the Commissioner of Indian Affairs wrote, "Your success brings renown, not only to the United States, but also to the American Indians, for whom you proved to be such a worthy representative." Thorpe defied the prevalent Indian stereotypes, becoming widely regarded as the greatest athlete of the time due to his huge success in the decathlon and football. Thorpe's success and fame, both on and off the field, helped decrease prejudice against Native Americans and paved the way for many other Native athletes to follow. A long line of Native American football players, including AFL champion defensive back Wahoo McDaniel, first overall draft pick Sam Bradford, and Super Bowl champions Austin Corbett of the LA Rams and James Winchester of the Kansas City Chiefs, have followed Jim's success in the NFL. Decades after Thorpe was the first Native American to win an Olympic medal, Billy Mills, a Native American who set records in the 10K, was not only inducted into the Olympic Hall of Fame, but also received the honor of carrying the flag at the opening ceremony. Race relations with Native Americans in sport continue to improve today as professional teams increasingly replace racist mascots and team names, such as the transition here in Cleveland from the Indians to the Guardians. Jim's athletic legacy continues to open frontiers for Native Americans to this day.
The biggest thing with him is, he knew the difficulties, Native Americans faced, and he was always looking to, support other Native Americans.